how to preload values in the form using the React hook form. That's the problem we are solving in today's video. Here is some scaffolding and the boilerplate code for my project which I'm going to use in today's video. If we move to our test page, this is a form which we need to fill the values by fetching the data from the API. For now, it is not getting the values from the API. We are solving this problem in today's video. We are using the React hook forms. This is the command npm install React hook form you can use to install the React hook form into your project. I'm using T3 stack for trpc, Tailwind, and Next.js. And the TypeScript is the third T because I'm using the TypeScript for this tutorial. But if you want to follow along into the JavaScript, the code is pretty similar. So let's move to the official documentation of the React hook form and open your project in the Visual Studio Code. Here I created a new page which calls the test2.tsx, and if I navigate to my site and I enter a new page, this is a blank page I get because I already set up the Daisy UI into my project. So the color background is the scheme which I created into my Tailwind config file. This is a theme setup I have already done, and the Daisy UI. Today's tutorial is not about the styling, but it is about using the React hook form. So we will be more focused on to using the React hook form rather than handling the styles. So this is a basic form, and let's go to the documentation, and here is some basic form they already provide. If we navigate to the handle submit, we will see that they provide a bunch of different codes for using the React hook form, and they also provide how to use it with the Material UI. We are not using the Material UI for so that is not our topic. We will navigate to, we are using a React hook form version 7, but if you are interested in the legacy, you can move to the version 5 and version 6, and you can navigate to the documentation. But we are using the version 7, so we will stick with that. And here we need an example where we just handling the basic form. So let's grab this form and replace it. We need the use form from the React hook form. Let's move the code here, and let's this code and paste it into our component and use form. So what it basically use is the test2. It need the capitalization for the TypeScript, so we will just rename this, and this use form error will be gone. And we need to provide the data types for this. Implicitly it has any data type, so we will tackle that handle later. If we move to the TypeScript, it will provide you with this kind of inputs and this kind of thing. So if let's use this. So now we have an input type which is handling example string and example required string. So let's change this to the let's say first name and the last name. So these are two things, and let's add email string. So the next thing is this one. Let's change that. Here you can see we are using the onSubmit tag and the submit handler. This is the submit handler. We provide the inputs, and these are the inputs that is going to be handled into the form, and we are just logging the data into the console. So let's move back to the documentation, and we are not watching anything, so let's leave it as it is and grab this form, and we are returning this instead of this div. And in this form we are registering the example and example required thing, so we are not using this. Instead we are using first name and the last name, and the default value it provides here like this as a test. And we will change this error field as well, last name, and because we need this arrow kind of thing in every field, so we are providing here. And similarly we can grab this one as well for another field of email. So let's say this is the email field and email. So these are kind of things that is being handled. Let's go back to the over page and see how it looks. Okay, so every field is pretty nested, and the submit query button. So we need to provide a little bit of styling here. Let's wrap this into a div, and I will style this form and get back to you in a while. Meanwhile I'm pausing this video. If I class name flex here, and we just separated at screen, full screen, item center and justify center, and this will center everything. And for these kind of inline thing, we can remove that with a simple separating them into different divs, and like this. And we can start a div here and like this, and one div here like this. So it should make sense. We have one more div here, and before that we need to end this div. Okay, so the next thing we need is this class name. Class name is equal to btn primary, or let's say secondary. The spell mistakes. Okay, we have a button, nice looking. So here our styling is finished. I also added a new field which is called the phone number, and this is how it looks like now. I created a card, and the text I forcibly make it white, and the theme I use the coffee theme, and because I use a little bright white color, the default coffee theme is like this, so I didn't like that. Business theme seems promising as well, but we'll stick with that, or a night. Let's try it out, a night theme, if it looks like that's impressive as well. Anyways, you can use whatever theme you like for you, and if you want to stick with the previous one or the coffee theme, you can do that. So if you enter the value, the error is gone, and like this. So if you hit the submit button, which is I renamed as a save button, it will send all the data values to the console, the email, first name, last name, and phone number. So far it is working as expected. I didn't implemented any data validation thing, just a pretty basic grab from the documentation. So we'll keep focus on the data, pre-fill data. So let's move to the next step. In the next step, I'm going to move this code into a separate component. So let's call that component in my components folder. I will create a new file and I will call user update.tsx, and I will rfce a default, and I will remove this one. So let's move to our test2 file and grab everything from here and put it into our component like this. Now come back here and grab this one and put it inside the user update component, and we are accepting the props here, so that will be of type input, and the props, let's see later on what we're gonna do with that. And grab this form from this card like this. So here put it like this one. Okay, so it seems pretty cool. Let's remove that for a while. We'll come back it later, and let's see what kind of error we have here. Okay, it expects an ending bracket here, and let's prettify the code. So our component is pretty much ready. Let's see the changes in our test2 file. It has nothing, and let's move back and grab this component, import user update component, and let's put it user update, so everything will be returned back as it is. Yes, the error is working and the error is gone as we type this, and if we go to the console and submit it, yes, it is returned into as an console log. Okay, so that is working. The next we are going to import the props, and let's call it preloaded values, and the type error, and for the type we can call it an inputs type. So I just forgot the syntax. Declaration, and let's call it props. Okay, let's try to render that inside. int and JSON.stringify the props. And props does not exist on type inputs. Okay, so props, and let's call it first name test, last name test, not equal to, we need a colon here, email test@gmail.com, and the font is some number, and we need to provide this like this. Okay, parsing error. Do we need another bracket here? Yes, I think we do. And the next thing is prop. Type props is not assignable to type intrinsic attribute and inputs. Property prop does not exist on the type. So we pass it as a user, and we are passing an object to this user. So first name, last name, email, and phone number, we are actually passing a whole object as a single component, which is user. And how we handle this into our user update form, yes, that makes a little more sense. So let's rename this to user update form, and let's make this change here as well, and apply that changes to the imports as well. And let's see if that affects user update form and user update form. Okay, so that changes, we made it, and we created an interface out of this input type, and we pass our user object here. So this way we are passing this input props instead of this type. We are passing an interface here, and due to this interface we are able to pass an object into as a prop to this user update form. So now we have this prop. We are just stringifying this props dot, let's say, user, and stringify this, and let's see how it results into our, yeah, this is our whole object that we are getting from that prop. So we can now we are on to that step where we will pass these values to this component. If we come to the documentation and get started page, if we scroll down in integrating with global states, if we see it provides the example where we are passing a value as a prop, and they are using the default value. And let's see if we can use the similar thing. We are just copying the code from them, and in our input field, here we are providing this as a that to our input field, and here you can see we can do that here, default value dot user dot first name, and let's copy this and paste it in and change this last name. We need to repeat the steps for email and font. So once we already done that, let's see if it applies. Yes, as you can see, now we have a default values Okay, so if we refresh the page, the default value persists. So let's remove that, there and that, and try to submit. It will not, and if you refresh, it will fetch the values from the props. Let's verify one more thing to submit it and see if it passed the values in the object. Yes. And if we change the email ID to something else, and then we try to save it, and yes, the values are being changed like this. And let's try to submit again. Okay, the values are changing and we are getting everything as expected. The next step we are going to do is to fetch these values from the database, and for the database purposes we are using the Prisma and the trpc as a backend API. So I already set up my API into my users.txt file. Here I have bunch of functions for get one query. This one we are going to use right now, but instead of this we need to provide an ID to get the values. And let's see if we can do that into our user update form. Instead of using it into the user update form, we need to query the values from our test2 page. And to use the query, first of all we need to import the trpc from utils/trpc, and from that trpc we need to use the find user query. You can name it whatever you like, and trpc.useQuery function. Remember, we are using the trpc version of 9. We are not using trpc version 10 because version 10 is still in the beta. And let me know in the comment if it is not beta anymore and you still need to help in the migration of the code into the version 10. I will try to create another episode of this tutorial if it requires to convert or port the code into the version 10. But for now we are using the query, and here you can see in the suggestion you have bunch of values that you can use as a query, and we are using the user.getOne, this one. Okay, so user.getOne, and as a second argument, first of all we need to put this into an array, and as a second argument we need to provide a function. I guess we need to use this in outside of this one, and here we can use the on success, and if we got any data we can alert JSON dot stringify the data, and if we face any error, I don't know if this is correct. Okay, so on error we can alert the error, and we need to provide it separated like this, and it has still. Okay, so the one more thing, it needs a string value to fetch data from the host. So post ID and string. So we need to provide an ID to this, and let's provide host ID, and we need to provide some ID. I'm not sure which ID it has, and error error of type any. Right, so this has the on error like this, and let's try to run this code. Yes, we have on error with the capital E, and we can use this. Let's move to the API and refresh the page, and it will fetch the query, and you can see that into this one is user.get1. It is passing the query and returning requested user not found in the database. It is an error, trpc client error, and requested user not found in the database, and this is another object which we are error.data. So if it is a data, let's try to JSON.stringify it and see what's inside this data, and try to refresh the page. It is automatically refreshed, and it is passing the query user.get1 and the result, a requested user not found in the database, and the code. It has the code not found, HTTP status, and the stack. So we only concerned about the code and the status, HTTP status. So let's see error dot message dot code like this. Do we have that? Code and HTTP status. Let's see if it works or not. I don't think so it will work. No, it will not, due to one extra bracket. The property code does not exist on type string. The message is it seems to them that message is of type string, and let's refresh. Okay, for now let's stick with this message. I'm not sure what's the problem with that. And okay, so we have find user query, and the query is working, and if find user query is not, if not find user query, let's return a div with the message of it's loading, and see if this works. Refresh the page. No. And make sure if you are using the documentation, you select the version 9 here, because version 10 is still in a beta. So use query, trpc use query hello, and if you need to pass any argument, you will do it like this. And here this way you can check the status, and let's see what kind of status it prints. And first of all, let's move it here. Let's use a div, and the class name just a little bit margin, and instead of this, find user query, and hopefully it has the status. Now let's move to our page, and it says loading. So we can check this. If the status is loading, we can use this, but it is still loading. I think the status is always loading. So it is keep querying and query. It means it is continuously querying. I'm not sure why. What if we move this one? We are already into this. Wait. Can we wait for that? We need this one as an async if we want to wait for that, right? Okay, so it is already doing this. I made simple changes, and then now I am passing the values as a string, the parameter from the user query and data, and the first name as a string, last name, email, and phone. Because these are some optional things, so these can be null, so I'm passing it as a string. Here I just checked if the query is loading, and if it is loading, I simply say it is loading. Otherwise I will say done loading. And in done loading, I need to remove this one from here and grab this. Okay, so I can replace that, right? Let's remove this one and this one from here, and instead of is success, we can use, let's remove that here, and not this one. So this is, and here, okay, so let's go back to where it was before. Let's remove these two divs here. Okay, so now let's see, done loading, and this thing I can remove this one. Let's remove this props here, and now we can see this one as plain. And if we try to change this and press save, okay, yes, the email and the things are changed again. Let's see if the data is changed. Get one, and as we change, it will refresh the values, but the data is same. If we put that here, it is done. Okay, so now the last step is we can simply update on the save button. If we press the save button, the value will be updated into the database. Okay, the next thing we let's try to create this in the user query in the use effect. Let's see if it works. And we need to set the data, and we need to use the use state function. And for the use state, we can provide it here, and the data value like this. Let's import the use state, and also import the use effect. Okay, so we had imported these two things, and the next thing we can create a use effect hook. Okay, I simply use state and change the data with the set data. I know it was not required, but I just did that for the sake of the simplicity. So now we have everything running. Let's move to the update form, and under the on submit we are going to use the mutations. So first of all, let's create an object of the mutation. We need to import the trpc here as well. Yes, recording it. So once I imported the trpc, so here we are creating a mutation is equal to trpc.useMutate, and in that we need to provide the user.update mutation, and in that mutation we need to provide arguments, and for the arguments we are using we need to provide what kind of we need to provide bunch of things like ID. The ID is most important one, so I didn't accept the ID here, so let's move that. And for that we need to change here as well, and ID data dot ID as string. Okay, although it is accepting the password as well, so I'm not using the password, so let's go and change the mutation so it do not accept the password. Like this is an update mutation, ID, first name, email, phone, and password. Let's remove this query here, and let's not change the password. This one, because I already fetched the value from if the user exists. Let's see. Okay, if we do the get one, it exists. So we can use the password as exists dot password. So we can use the previous password. Yeah. So I think pretty good so far. Let's move back to update it, and we need to pass the props. Let's pass the props here, and no, the argument, no need to pass the argument here. Okay, so here we only need an update mutation variable. We will use this mutation inside on submit like this. Let's put some brackets and update mutation dot mutate, and here I need to provide the bunch of values, and I will simply pass the variable which is data, I think, and I do not have an ID field, which I need that. So let's make use of a simple input type is equal to hidden, and the value or the default value is equal to props.id as string. ID does not exist. Okay, we'll see that later. And close the input, type hidden. We need to register it, and we need to put it here and ID. So we are putting the props data in the test tool. So what we are doing here, it is using the user type. We have the ID, right? ID, first name, last name, email, and phone number. So we are passing this ID as string. Yes. The data, props, input props dot user, props dot user dot id. So user dot id, this one. Cool. So now we have an ID, and for the mutation, okay, so type of undefined is not assignable to the type string. Okay, we just remove the optional parameter in the mutation. Here it is required now the ID to pass, and we just match these two things. In the here we remove the optional thing. Now ID is must. So that's how we tackle this scenario. Now let's see if it works, and let's move to the page like this, and let's try to update, save. This is not working. Let's come back, remove this mutation and comment out this and see if it works. Save. Yes, it is working so far. Let's uncomment this and see if it still works. Yes, it is still working. Now if we use this mutation, does that still works? Yes, user.update tc user not found. So the user is not found. Okay. User not found. Input. The provided input is first name, last name, email. Where is the ID? Email, but this is the ID. What? The ID is empty. So we need to see why this ID is empty. Let's move to the test2, and we are passing the data ID as string. Where are we getting the data? So yes, we are setting this here. Okay, so we are not setting the ID, data dot ID as string. So now we casted the values here. Let's go back, remove this, refresh, let's update, save. It is updating, mutation.update. I think it is successful right now, and if it is successful, this will be remain the email if we refresh the page. So we refresh the page, yes it is, and we can double check into the Prisma Studio, and localhost it is 5555. And if we go to the email, yes, you can see the email is now 8989. So if we change this one into h3new@gmail.com, and the first name is my new name and last name updated, and let's say we want to update the phone number as well, and we updated the query. And if we move to the Prisma, refresh, yes, so my new name and last name updated, and everything is updated now. So that's how the things works, and that's all for today. If we try to summarize today's lecture, we first of all created a form, and we use the React hooks for React hook form, so that we can refill or pre-fill the form. We use the default value parameter, and we use the latest API version of React hook forms. And after that, we integrated this into the trpc, and for the trpc backend API, we fetch a data of the current user. Once that data is fetched, we pass that data to the React hook forms, and after that we updated or mutated the data. So that's how it all works, and that's all for today's lecture.